Hello and welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, where teachers and professionals in the education space share their best practices to help you become a more remarkable teacher today. I'm your host, Vicki Davis, and this is episode 654, titled Top 10 Ways to Give Back While at Home. I also want to thank We Schools and the All-State Foundation for sponsoring today's podcast. Being a volunteer is a great way for kids to develop social emotional learning skills, and I suggest that we all celebrate National Volunteer Week coming up next week by joining We and the All-State Foundation for Let's Volunteer Now. This is a free online event this Friday, April 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern on the We Movement Facebook channel. I'll tell you more about it at the end of the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis. Vicki's guest today is Dr. Kim Schonert-Reichl. Dr. Kim is an expert advisor for the We organization's We Schools program, which is accessed by over 18,000 schools across North America. Kim is known as a world-renowned American expert in the area of social emotional learning, and her studies are wide and vast. Let's join the conversation with Vicki and Dr. Kim right now.
So we've been focusing on social emotional learning and the social aspect of students, and I'd encourage you to listen to yesterday's podcast where we talk about, sort of the landscape of SEL and the emotions that students are experiencing. And today, Kim, we're going to talk about top 10 ways to give back while at home. And then tomorrow's episode, we're actually going to interview a student who's giving back at home. And we do want to disclose that our advertiser today is the We Schools program, and you are a research advisor for them. That, of course, this content is our own. They didn't really have any control over the content except just to say, hey, this is a great person to talk about with SEL and your research. So, Kim, is it even possible to give back while you're at home?
Yes, there's so many things you can do to engage your children and to engage students in activities that are going to benefit others. And just a little bit before I get into my top 10 list, I just really want to say what the research says about giving back, about volunteering. We know that when you help another person, that you actually boost your own immune system. Some research we've done found that adolescents who volunteered with younger children actually lowered their risk for heart disease. We know it boosts your happiness and helps young people develop a sense of purpose in the world. And it's very interesting, when you lift up and think about how I can make the world a better place, it also gives you really a sense of agency. So there's so many benefits to children and youth and adults for volunteering and giving back. And again, we know that the We organization, We Schools, and SEL has a number of resources if people want to go to weschools.org with a number of different resources. And I will disclose also that I became interested in this area of volunteering and well-being when I was in 8th grade, when I had an 8th grade teacher at my junior high in Chicago who had us engage in activities to help the mentally ill. We actually went to an institution in which we connected with the people who were there who were suffering with mental illness, and it had a lifelong impact on my whole trajectory of what I focused on. So I just want to say how in 8th grade that set my life in motion to focus on this.
Where do we go from here, Kim?
So a couple of the things I would say, the 10 ways that we could connect. One might be becoming a senior citizen pen pal. I did this actually when I was a Girl Scout leader, where of a junior troop who wrote cards, did beautiful cards for senior citizens. Either we'd bring them to the senior center or leave them on their porches, of just wonderful note of telling them how much we're thinking about them and wishing them well. You could engage your children in cleaning the house for a cause. So, for example, thinking about their toys that they're no longer using or clothes that they've outgrown, and think about putting them together and then be able to share what you have collected and tag friends to do the same. So really donating this to a shelter. You could also think about going through clutter in closets and think about once we are able to have no more physical distancing, having a yard sale to raise money for a cause. Another one might be starting an online reading club, where one thing we know, when younger children and older children, like a peer mentoring, work together, it benefits both. So maybe an online reading club where you get some of the older children connecting with the younger children to do reading, to take part. So pairing them through video chat or having virtual story time. It's so fascinating how much younger children love children just one generation above. There's just something like you get the elementary school kids with the high school students. And I have to say from experience, I find those children listen much more to the other children than they do to me.
Yes, they do.
And so you get them both involved. And as I made mention, we did a study where we had these older high school students working with elementary school children as part of a research study. And even when we ended the research study, the high school students continued helping out with the younger kids because they got so much worthwhile from it. Talking about spreading joy and gratitude in the community by thanking essential service workers, writing positive messages on sidewalk chalk. What we're doing right now in British Columbia, and I love it, at 7 p.m. every evening, you can step out on your porch with pots and pans and, I guess, spoons to bang them with. And every place people step out and bang the pans in support and thanks of gratitude for the essential service workers. So I step out every day and there are children lined up on all the porches banging those pots and pans. And so, that showing of gratitude and say that we're all in this together and how much we're appreciating it. It's quite amazing. I think the other one is really to think about, how are their neighbors doing? Could they leave a note for if they know someone is elderly, finding out if they need groceries. Of course, a food bank, trying to find out from food banks what they need during this time. Are there ways that children can contribute to that? Number 8 would be starting a tutoring network where they connect with classmates and tutor younger and older children. Again, what's essential here is to be connected and how important that is. Another one would be, to spread positivity online. Right now we're inundated with looking at all the things of how much people are harmed, how many people have COVID, all the other things. But how can we start thinking about sort of positive messages, positive photos? Another thing is to try and think about how kids could work together to have like a craft for good club. A lot of children are doing hearts on the windows. So you could go down streets and you will see all of these hearts that are kind of showing our love and appreciation for all the essential service workers, but also for one another, that love still prevails. I think that's a really critical one.
We have some students at our school that are making masks. They had sewing machines at their house, and one young lady I know has just made up so many of them, and there's all these patterns and ways that you can do that. Some are cooking for their families. There's so many ways that kids can be useful. I mean, is there any research that talks about feeling needed?
I think one thing that we know from the research, well, there's several things. Being connected to one another, but there's something about engaging in activities that help other people, that boost your well-being. It creates a positive, what we call prosocial identity. You now see yourself as someone who helps others. Never before in history can we collectively develop a prosocial identity where we are people who are going to help one another. And I think, number one, this idea that I think it should be emphasized explicitly that by staying in, by practicing physical distancing, we are helping others. We are being kind, caring, compassionate people because we are helping world. And we have to just emphasize that to children. And the other thing I really want to emphasize here, and I hope it doesn't make me too unpopular, is that when children help others, when they're reaching out and they're helping with chores at home, when they're doing these things, they should not be paid. What we know from the research is that when you say, if you do this, you'll get, $5. If you do this, you're going to get this reward, that it undermines that sense of purpose and sense of well-being that you get just by knowing you made a difference in the world.
Well, the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, we know intrinsic motivation is basically unstoppable. When I knew that I wanted to run a half marathon, no matter my age, if somebody had said, hey, I'm going to pay you to run a half marathon, it wouldn't have been the same.
What we know is that when children engage in these helpful, pro-social, volunteer activities, that paying them or giving them some extrinsic reward actually undermines that volunteering behavior. And there's been research with really young children showing that children naturally behave altruistic, meaning helping someone without any expectation or reward. And when the researchers started rewarding the children, they stopped helping.
Wow. So as we finish up, of course, we're going to share the resources from We Schools so that people can know how to volunteer, how to connect. There's a lot of resources. But would you just give an encouraging, I guess, pep talk to parents and teachers working with today's youth as we work to help them through this time?
Well, I think it's so critical to know that we are in an unprecedented time and to practice compassion. You know, if their children seem stressed and they're having to deal with all these things, to try and reframe and think they're dealing with something that we've never had to deal with in our history, and to try and understand that that's how they're communicating their frustration. And I think also critical is to practice self-compassion, to realize that we are all in this together. You know, teachers who are amazingly organized, or parents who now have to work at home at the same time educating their children. We have to practice that self-compassion. And I think what we know from the research and the science of what will help our well-being is, one, being connected and spending time on those relationships, and also engaging in activities that benefit each other. I have to say, for my own household, we're actually having dinner together every night and making things together, and that is a gift. So to cherish those moments together and to find ways in which you can strengthen your own inner resources to weather this. And I think also to give children an opportunity of how to reflect on how they're helping others really impacts their well-being.
Educators and parents, as we talk about this, as we help kids, I just encourage you to find ways to give back, just because that's what we do. We give back, we encourage, we help. I know my own son has been doing the dishes every night, and he's been working out at the farm, and that's his contribution to the family that he just does because he wants to help. I hope you'll continue the conversation. Let's talk on Twitter at CoolCatTeacher. Also, head over to the blog so that you can connect. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. Be sure and connect with us on Twitter, or you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. We are very excited because the We Schools program, made possible by the Allstate Foundation, is kicking off National Volunteer Week with Let's Volunteer Now. This is a free online event to help discover how virtual volunteering can help your students build social-emotional learning skills. It will be hosted on Friday, April 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the We Movement Facebook channel. And check out these special guests. Social emotional learning expert Dr. Amy Cranston will be there, along with her brother, award-winning actor Bryan Cranston, and they're going to be joined by remarkable students and We Volunteer Now campaign participants Tyler and Jameson. We're celebrating National Volunteer Week with you, and this is a great time to start. So thanks for listening, and we hope you can join us next time.